Yeah, I got that F word.
I get it.
We're rolling, we're starting with
We're
you
rolling?
first.
Okay.
Look at your camera.
Absolutely.
Go.
All right. All right. Good evening. It took me a minute. Good evening, everybody. We are here in the Neff Law Building. I'm Adam Stone. I'm joined by my partner, Tanya Iyer, and her daughter, Ashley, who is here joining us. We're hoping that Meredith O'Brien, Joe Hatta, will be joining us soon. But we also have a very special guest, Dr. Jolie Brahms from Columbus. I think she's joining us remotely. Dr. Brahms, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Adam.
All right. We're going to jump right in and start having a discussion today about substance abuse addiction specifically. I know as I sit here with a beer in front of me, the irony is not lost. But one of the things that, Doc, I want to start with you about really defining what addiction is and how it works within the brain. I think that's something that people don't understand.
You know, when we talk about addiction, it's very easy. Anybody can get out a DSM and look up what addiction is, okay? And that is what courts normally do. They look at it a very constricted view of what addiction is. Addiction is a psychological and neurological impairment. It has to do with the way that you were brought up. It has to do with predispositions about how your liver metabolizes alcohol, how your brain responds to drugs. It has to do with the environment that you lived in. It has to do with what coping mechanisms you developed. So alcoholism is a symptom of a conglomerate of problems. And one of the problems we have in the legal system is that we don't know how to understand, recognize, respect, or sort out those problems. We have to deal with the neurological issues as well as the psychological issues, the environmental issues, and for many people, the long-term diagnostic path that got them to that point. So this is a very complex problem. And as attorneys, I think it's very important why this podcast is so important, Adam, is to really get a real understanding in your brain, in your heart, that when you see that client with a substance abuse problem, you have an understanding of what to ask and how to think about them.
Well, and that's one of the big reasons that we brought Ashley in. And Ashley, you have a very special relationship with my partner. But I want you to introduce yourself if you could. And please, I know you have a Facebook page that is very active, where you're very open with the process of recovery. But if you could introduce yourself, please.
Well, my name is Ashley Mullins, and I do have a Facebook page specifically geared towards self-care, recovery, just overall mental health, and what can be done to improve it. It's called Self-Care with Ashley, and that's also my YouTube channel. So I talk about neuroplasticity, which is, in short, basically the patterns in your brain, and, forming new ones, how they get formed. I do a lot of research, so I don't sound like a dummy.
Well, let me ask you this, Ashley.
Yes.
Why do you do that? Why is this so? Why are you so passionate about this?
Okay, well, I was in addiction for a good 6 or 7 years. And honestly, I started right at the end of my senior year of college. So I'm lucky in a sense, because if it was any earlier, I wouldn't have graduated. I was actually high on heroin at my graduation.
At your college graduation?
Yes.
Wow.
And looking back, it's it doesn't matter now.
Where did it start for you, though? I mean, everybody has a different starting point. So where did it start for you?
Well, it's interesting because growing up, I always thought, even weed, everything was so bad because I went to Winford. It was a smaller school, so I feel like it's more cliquey there. You have your druggies and your athletes and all that stuff, and I never really fit into one or the other, so I tended to just hang out with the bad kids. And now that they were bad kids, I just could tell that they were brought up in bad homes, and I didn't really have anything in common. I didn't want to spend my weekend getting high and stuff like that. To me was so foreign. But then I moved to Marion Harding for my senior year, where there was almost 400 kids in my graduating class.
As compared to what, a 60?
86 was in,
Winford,
yeah,
sure.
Exactly. So, when I met all of these new friends, and my dad's a teacher there, so I kind of trusted his judgment on who to hang out with and who to stay away from. And his favorite students were right up my alley. They were hilarious. One was class president. They were in band. They were ambitious. They had good families. Come to find out, smoked every day before school, after school.
Sure.
And then, I rolled on ecstasy for prom for the first time.
Okay.
So, like, that to me was like a really just hard, like, it didn't make sense to me because I always had associated drugs with being bad, not going anywhere in life. And these people, like, they had goals. They were going.
They were the quote unquote good people,
Right.
but were using at the same time.
Yeah, so something I had to reevaluate my stance on, what is bad, what is good, and is society just telling us that for a warning, like it could get bad?
Doc, I want to stop right there.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to pitch this over to Dr. Braun. Can you comment on like that transition, and is that something that is commonly seen? I guess being from the attorney standpoint, and Tanya, you can speak to this as well because I know you do a lot of cases that involve drugs. A
The
lot.
majority of my criminal cases, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
can you speak to those pivotal moments, like how? And I'm actually speaking as a dad here, not just an attorney, but how we can monitor that and identify those times. Is there really even a way to do that?
That's hard. And I think that the times come before the actual time that, like, Ashley decided to trip when she was at her graduation or whatever she decided to do. It starts with how much a risk taker is a person. How much do they look at? She knew the difference between, in quotes, bad kids and good kids.
Right.
But she allowed herself to make the actual decision to take a chance and take ecstasy during her prom. Okay.
Right.
That's a risky proposition. I can say the same things about intravenous drug use. Okay. I can't get my nieces to eat a green bean. Okay. How do you? I've tried. I believe you God, I've tried, and all the training, 40 years, I can't get them to eat a green bean. But the reason,
we got to book a new psychologist, Chris.
I have tried, Adam. But when you think about substance abuse, I see kids very early on. They're smoking weed when they're 9. How does a 9-year-old tolerate the taste of marijuana and hot smoke in their mouth? What is dead in them at that point in time?
How do they
you
even
do that?
know? How do they even know what it, like, that blows my mind.
That's completely fair. Within your own experience, though.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I'm using as my skeleton here. But yeah, go ahead, Doc. That's
Sorry.
No, but
Ashley,
as far as
Absolutely.
Ashley, I don't know anything about Ashley's background. She's obviously an incredibly intelligent young woman and very ambitious at this point in time.
Yeah.
But where does the risk-taking behavior come in, and what did it do for her in particular? Somebody else, look, heroin is highly addictive, and there's no doubt that when you take heroin, you'll feel better when you don't take heroin. Okay, everyone has anxieties. It's an incredibly addictive drug. But we got to look first at the risk factors. Why does someone make those decisions to do that in the first place? And what is it about their lives that's so satisfying in addition to the neurological science part of this? And I think that Ashley can address that very well.
Yeah, and Ashley, continue on. I think because I think what she's hitting on is exactly where you want to go.
Yes,
go
exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much to say.
Yes, there is.
There is, and that's the hard part about this topic is because it's like when you're peeling an onion and there's just so many layers to it.
Right.
So,
okay.
But to take it from what I really want to get.
Yeah, but Adam, our courts don't peel an onion is the problem.
No, they don't. They don't. But
No.
we as lawyers have the ability to peel that onion, and that's something that I really want us to learn from
We'll
this.
stop for just a minute. We need to stop.
You want us to stop for a second, Chris?
We need to stop for just a minute.
We get Joe and Meredith.
While Joe and Meredith are here, the problem is that camera,
Yeah.
I'm picking up, I just picked this up. I'm picking up from where it says arrest date, just above her head. And I want to,
Screen that off.
well, I want
We
to
got to get to
adjust the
Ashley's
camera, so
question.
just a minute.
Ashley's answer here.
Tell Doc,
We
I'm sorry, I
are
didn't
just
see that.
a second. Chris caught something. He wants to clear up real quick.
Yeah, sorry about this, Doc. Should've caught
You
it
mean
earlier.
the
My fault.
you mean the whiteboard?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're fixing it right now. And you're gonna clear it off.
Well, no, watch.
Oh, there you go. Nice job, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you. That's great.
Let's have a different angle.
Yeah, angle down now.
Zoom out just a little bit.
And Chris, it is blurry. Is that going to be blurry on the video?
It won't. No.
No.
The way it records is a lot clearer. Can you move that chair, Ashley?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oops.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay,
think.
so I'm gonna, Joe and Meredith are here,
They're here.
or Joe's here, hold on. Now Joe's here, now you should be able to hear Joe.
Joe, can I hear you?
Yeah, can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. How about Meredith? You there?
She's nearby.
Okay. All right. We're gonna keep having we're having a discussion with Dr. Brahms
I
and
wouldn't
with
start that.
Ashley, with Ashley Mullins. So we're gonna continue to have that conversation. When you guys are ready to pop in, when you guys are set to go, let us know,
Okay.
and we'll
will do.
bring you right into the conversation. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Can you? All right. Good. So Ashley, you were discussing within the context of your own experience those next steps. You talked about specifically using ecstasy at prom.
Yes.
But how do you go from what is? And I know Dr. Brahms is going to chew me up for this. I know that. But how do you go from using what is technically described as a party drug
Right.
to heroin?
And that's the thing that's okay. So I tried Coke, Adderall, and ecstasy, and obviously weed, all within my senior year of high school.
Okay.
I just hung around those guys, and like I said before, they were great guys. They were going to Bowling Green, so I kind of just followed them there because I was not sure what I wanted to do in
And
life.
these were people that were at least identified to you as good kids.
Yeah, one
Good
was
people.
class president.
Right,
My
right.
dad loved them, which
Right.
is he's a good judge of character.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, when I tried heroin, it was kind of like a perfect storm because obviously heroin's bad. Like, and I know that now, but I didn't have all of the information to base that choice on. Like, of course I had DARE, but no one in my family, I didn't have any friends. I did not know what addiction was. I didn't know it caused withdrawal. And that may sound super naive, but
I don't think that's super naive at all. I
Like-
think there's a vast majority of our school kids today that have no idea.
and that's what scares me because it's getting younger and younger. I was 20-something, 22 at the time, 21. No, not 21. Around that age. It doesn't matter when it happened.
It's all right.
But yeah, so I was like, okay, my rationality for it was I have tried every single drug you could think of, never once got addicted, never once anything bad
Doc,
happened.
is that true? Did she never once get addicted even though she's doing those drugs?
I think it depends on our definition of addiction, and I think Ashley can answer that best. She got addicted, I'm guessing, to the social connections, to the thrill, to the adventure of it, to feeling good at various points of time. There had to be, Ashley, I could be incorrect, some type of drive to do it. I hate to use the word addiction, but a drive to keep trying things.
Right, well, and I am a very curious person. I think psychology in general is fascinating. I think the
Wait,
way...
Go ahead, Doc.
No, go ahead. I want to hear what
she's-
Ashley has to say.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay, I just think it's fascinating the way to me, I was like playing with my brain. I was experimenting with it. That was very interesting to me. And of course, I was always around my friends and they were partying and stuff. And alcohol did start, I can't handle hangovers. Like, that's just not in my DNA.
Sure.
So I was like, well, I want to I want to have fun too. And drugs just happened to be around. And then, of course, I had the occasional trips and everything. So I guess I was addicted to taking my mind out of
Reality.
the current state.
Reality.
Yeah.
But Ashley, let me ask you a question. Okay, Adam hires me. I'll use an example of a case I have. Adam hires me because you had a boyfriend who asked you to take some heroin over to Indiana, and you cross state lines. You've got a federal offense. Okay, you get caught, and Adam hires me to evaluate you. And I start talking to you about your childhood. I talk to your mom about your childhood, about your development. Is there anything you think in your developmental experiences that made you feel that you like doing this? And you talk about having, in quotes, fun. Fun is a very benign word. It's a very simplistic word. You can have fun doing a lot of things, taking a walk and playing with your dog. You had fun in a different way. So if I was asking you this in an evaluation, in general, you don't have to talk about personal things, but in general, what do you think made you that way so a court could understand how there was...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think I was saying this before. It was kind of like the perfect storm. I was on the cusp of graduating. I was lost a year or so before that. I had lost my grandfather. Don't deal with death well. I've never really had coping skills. I mean, no one deals with death well, but I am a person that feels so intensely. Whether it's my problem or not, like your problem is just as intense to me as it is you. Like, and that's just the person I am. If someone I care about is in pain, I'm in pain. And to a point that becomes way too much. And so not only did I not ever deal with my grandpa passing away, but I was graduating with no direction. And then, I met this guy that had heroin, he had the hookup. So I was like, well, I've tried everything else. And, in my mind, nothing bad ever happened. There was no traumatizing, heroin's a whole different thing.
But Ashley, this is what I think is significant for the attorneys watching this. You have just saved people's lives by stating years of their life by stating what you did. What you're stating, judges and courts believe that people start using drugs because they're irresponsible. They just want to. They don't care what happens. They're antisocial. They are different than the rest of us.
No.
What you're stating, listen to what you just said. You stated that you feel for yourself and you feel for others. There's probably a reason in the way you were brought up or your basic genetics that you feel intensely. People can only feel so much intensely. You got involved with this heroin guy. Now, the example I gave you is a case that I actually had, crossing state lines. Someone very much like you, Ashley, not as educated, but a nice girl, very much like you, intensely feels for this young man who's really nothing but a dirtbag, but regardless, feels that way, feels intently about wonders who she is. You talk to a judge about, was it that Ashley just took drugs because she just took drugs? Isn't there an etiology to this? And don't we have a responsibility to represent everyone in court and explain? There's the scales of justice. We're supposed to have. That's why that lady sits there with a scale. I mean, she's not there for decoration. Don't you think that you're? Yeah, it's supposedly.
Okay, I was going to say.
Right, Meredith.
We got Meredith and Joe joining us now as well. So I think we'll all take issue with that comment.
But I think the point is that Ashley, I want to hear from these guys, but I think that Ashley just wrote her own psychological report. Ashley is what a downward departure is about. Ashley is explaining that we are so far behind from a psycholegal perspective that alcoholism and substance abuse are not diseases. And I stated before we went on the camera, I mean, we used to kill mentally retarded people. Then we used to put 17-year-olds to death and 16-year-olds. Then we put them in prison for the rest of their life. We're finally understanding the complexity of human nature. But when it comes to substance abuse, we put people in a separate category.
I mean, we sterilize the developmentally disabled.
We used to.
Yeah, we used to.
And what's really messed up is a lot of drug dealers and stuff use the, mentally disabled or whatever to run for them. like to make runs for them, like, and so then they get caught up, and what if they get caught up, like what does that mean for them, like
And Dr.
it
Dr.
goes
Brahms and I,
endless.
we currently, Dr. Brahms and I have a case that is almost on point to that
Oh my God.
that exact issue. Yeah.
You might want to address, Adam, you might want to address that. Give us sort of a summary about what that's all about. That's an incredible story.
It is. It's a case in which, and Joe Meredith, we're going to be cutting to you here in just a couple minutes, but it's a fascinating case in which my client in federal court, when I first had her, she was functionally illiterate. She could function, but she could not read.
She still is.
And she still is. You're right, Doc. She absolutely she still is. Now, what I didn't realize was the full extent of her disability. Once I realized that she was on disability herself, and that she had we got her school records, and she had all of these IEPs, all these issues going on. I called Dr. Brahms at that point and had her do an evaluation. And you know, Tanya, you and I have spoken about this in the past. This, you know this client.
Yep.
Essentially, it comes back that this woman who was running drugs in a case that is ultimately, I think, 20 defendants deep, was running drugs for drugs. That was the only compensation she received. But she was truly, developmentally disabled is not the right word. What's the best word to describe that client? I can't think of any other word.
Well, she's developmentally disabled in terms of what the court needs to appreciate. Her IQ is slightly above what at Atkins level.
Right.
But she's illiterate. So's her mother. I mean, Adam and I laughed at this, but her mother tells me that reading was hard for her because of the silent vowels. Okay, so Adam and I have had a lot of laughs about silent vowels. But okay. He needs a drink for that. But this yeah. Try to say Corona with no O's.
That's right.
That's right, Adam.
I was just gonna try it.
I'm trying.
We've been doing, we've had a good time with that one.
Adam, I know why you're leaving Bucyrus.
What is
You want to know why
that?
you're leaving Bucyrus?
What
Because
is
there's
that?
no cases of Corona.
It's true. Thank you. You got it. So Meredith, Joe, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So tell about the case. So I mean, basically, this woman has no skills to survive in this world, and what we came down to, thanks to Adam and his partner, is to get her civilly committed. She cannot take care of herself.
I mean, she's truly incompetent, and you know, Dr. Brahms went so far as to put that in her report that she was incompetent to the point where she needed a guardian. Now, you know, her willingness to accept that was a very difficult sell. But ultimately, you know, once she's on supervised release, we have the ability to file for that guardianship, and luckily I have Tani here who's able to do that for me. But in other situations, you know, we all know lawyers out there who say, okay, she's functionally literate, but we know she's competent because she can repeat back to me what it is I'm telling her.
Yeah.
But that's their understanding, Ashley. Yeah, but that's their understanding of mental health. That's their understanding of lack of understanding, I should say, of developmental disabilities, things of that nature. So, Joe, Meredith, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
It's good to have you guys. You're fine. I know, Meredith, you had to do your hair or something. I don't know. I genuinely believe that.
For you.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing. I know, right? So
But
we're
my
go ahead.
question is for Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is Meredith O'Brien. I'm an attorney. I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you here. I'm wondering, when you were, did you have access to any kind of mental health treatment
No.
prior to? No.
Nope.
Okay. And when you had said before that you were, you know, you're very, you feel a lot. You're an emotional person. I heard that you're very empathetic. If somebody's upset that you care about, you're upset too. Did you have anybody to talk to about those feelings or what that was doing to you, or were you just kind of dealing with it on your own?
For the most part, I was dealing with it on my own. I did talk to a few different counselors throughout my life. One being at Bowling Green after my grandpa passed. And then there were a couple, not super recently, but when I moved, it was after college. And basically, they all three did diagnose me with being bipolar, which I think, maybe I am. But at the same time, in my eyes, and of course, obviously, like we've said before, it's different for each individual. And I think I've gotten to the point now where I am. There's like static in here. Is that
Yeah,
normal?
you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll play itself out. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Editing.
But yeah, so and I also think that maybe, and not all, obviously, but there are some psychiatrists out there that will overdiagnose, just because, like, when you get a diagnosis, you kind of like fit into this box. And like, I don't have necessarily like huge highs and huge lows. I'm just a very sensitive person that feels a whole lot. And to me, I don't see anything wrong with that. Obviously, back then, when I didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life and using drugs to cope, obviously that's a problem.
Well,
But
that's what I was going to ask you. So
Yeah.
to me, there's a difference between receiving a diagnosis and then receiving adequate treatment for the diagnosis.
oh
Do you
yeah.
feel as though because you did not have adequate treatment that you turned to self-soothing? Like, and I don't.
Yeah.
Was it lead you? Was it heroin? Is that what it led you to? I'm not trying to. I just missed the first 15 seconds of this because I was kind of doing my hair.
You're good.
I'm just messing.
You're good. So yeah, basically, they diagnosed me, put me on pills. I took them for about a week or two. Didn't like how they made me feel. And
What did they put you on?
what did they prescribe me?
Mm-hmm.
Wellbutrin, Zoloft, Seroquel.
That's not just little stuff.
No.
Ashley, my goodness.
No, and I like.
They did those all at once, or like in
No, not all at once. Seroquel was partnered with something, and it was a while ago. I can't remember what it was with, but it was some sort of antidepressant. But yeah, Seroquel is like what they will prescribe for dementia and stuff like that. And like to me, it's just like I don't want to live my life like this, and.
When you say like this, though, I don't want to live my life like what?
Just going on, like, trying to find what medication would work. And because ultimately, I feel like that messes up your brain chemistry anymore, like, or even more. So, to me,
What chemistry? Like, did you go to? Was it talk therapy? Was it like cognitive behavioral therapy? Like, what did you do instead?
I literally had no therapy. It was just a whole lot of self-reflection. And I am lucky in the light of, I am intelligent. I am very self-reflective. And I am able to see why things are the way that they are, which is like, I have 3 things that are key in my eyes to getting over something, whether it be addiction or not. But
Not 12 steps?
no, just 3.
Just 3, okay. She narrowed it down for us. We appreciate that.
She's on the express track.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, it all comes down to like learning yourself. Why are you the way that you are? And because honestly, we are all victims of circumstance to a certain point. Once we become adults, we have to be aware of the problems that we have and where they stem from, and then make a conscious choice to, get better.
But Ashley, I think you're making a sweeping generalization in that regard. First of all, the idea of an adult, in a lot of cases, in a lot of situations that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, I think Meredith, Joe, you guys can speak to this. Tani definitely can speak to this. We're dealing with people that are over the age of 18 that function like they're 13, 14 years old. How can you be self-reflective at 13? Or
Oh, of
you
course.
talked about coping skills in and of itself. How, and Doc, you can speak to this as well. If you don't have the coping skills and you're 18 years old and you're being charged, or 20 years old, you're being charged in federal court or state court with a crime, you come out and you've got all this treatment that they're handing you. Do you even know what the hell to do with it?
The question is, what kind of treatment are you getting? And that is a painful question in this country, because drug and substance abuse treatment programs are exceedingly varied, generally poor, and many of them have either a lack of appreciation for the etiology, the origins of what got someone there, or they have an over appreciation of money. And so they're, you go to a place, going to a spa and having a facial is not going to make you not a heroin addict. That's not going to work. And going to the Salvation Army, where they kick you out for being gay and talking about the fact that you were raped by a man and you're a man, so they kick you out of the program for 3 days, that doesn't help either.
Talk about that. Talk about that. I want to hear that situation. I mean, I know we talked about it before, but I want to make sure that our listeners get a chance to hear that, and especially Meredith and Joe, because I think it'll appall them as well.
I think that whether you're a middle class person with insurance, and we could talk about that too, or you're very wealthy or very poor, your chances of getting adequate substance abuse care is very small to none. And the reason is that this is an incredibly complex problem, and we don't put money into it. And many of the people working at these agencies are not highly educated. I don't mean this in a bad way. They're bachelor's level people. They don't have that broad-based understanding of the brain, many ways like Ashley does. So what are these programs like? People get on a bandwagon. I do not support the Salvation Army. I think that they have, especially in their treatment programs, a very narrow and non-inclusive focus. I did have a federal case, where a gentleman who's a African-American gentleman, about 40 years old, did a bank robbery, was referred to post-release supervision. And he ended up at the Salvation Army, and he has a substance abuse problem, a lot of meth, a lot of weed, a lot of alcohol, all kinds of stuff. He was raped by his mother's pimp, when he was a child, over and over again in Philadelphia. And he cannot play basketball because if an African-American sweaty guy brushes against him, he has a panic attack and he dissociates. He tried to talk about this in the treatment program. They said it was not a Christian thing to talk about. He left the program after 3 days. This is not the first story that I've heard like that. Wow. But how do you treat such a complex problem? We have very simplistic ways of dealing with these issues. So what I find, whether it's state court, drug courts, or federal courts, people go to programs, we don't even know what these programs do. We do not know. I'll ask you, let me ask this. Actually, the cheapest, best, if you're really going to be inexpensive and have one shot at that, is what Ashley's talking about. Ashley is saying things that are so pivotal. She did her own motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is where you ask a client questions that self-motivates. So an addict would come in and say, man, I don't have a car. And you say, well, what do you want to do about that? I don't know. Maybe I could steal one. What would happen if you stole one? How would
we get that answer too. I know you kind of giggle, but we get that answer. I mean, we can get that answer. Yeah.
Okay. So through motivational interviewing, you are doing what a parent normally would do. These people have not had parents. Not saying that for Ashley.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Meredith. They've not had. Thank you, Meredith. And your hair does look really good. As usual.
That's right.
I know. Okay, so talking about parenting. So what you're saying is poignant, pivotal.
Let me ask Joe a quick question, because Joe, one of the standard for in an OVI first offense, where do they send you if you got to plead out? Driver's intervention program.
A hotel for 3 days.
Right, you're 72 hours to get you clean, right?
I snuck drugs in there with me.
Did you?
Sure did.
Oh my God!
Really?
Wow.
So
My friend
easy.
got drunk at his VIP program.
I don't even think they advertise as a rehabilitation program. They're a deterrent. I mean, I think Mothers Against Drunk Driving would admit that too. It's a deterrent. Like that's
It's just a deterrent. It's not for rehabilitative purposes. What
Right.
do you, Joe? What do you do? Oh, go ahead. What do you do when you have that guy that comes back to you over and over again? I mean, obviously our rules of professional conduct do not require us to take that additional step and try to help. Do you feel like and you have every right to say no, because we really don't at the end of the day. Do you feel like you have like almost a moral obligation to be like, look, man, this is a really big problem. You're not just going to hurt yourself, you might hurt somebody else. I mean, how do you address that in your own practice?
So, in the words of Ken Bosson, we are attorneys and counselors at law.
Right.
And Ken, I had the fortunate benefit of Ken is my DUI dad, and like he's my mentor in all this. So I've seen him counsel people through. I've seen my former boss Pat Quinn counsel people through.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat's been sober for 20 years, and he can talk to people like other people can't. But I think there is a step of just trying to reach that person personally and saying you really need to pursue treatment, regardless of what the court says. Like, if you don't want this to happen again, this is a path you need to walk. Getting through to that person's tough. If they don't want to listen to you, they're not going to listen. So
well, let me ask.
I get families involved. If it's at that point,
really?
I get families.
that helps too.
Okay. I want to ask.
Joe, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was literally going to pitch to that. I think we're going to the same place, Doc. Dr. Brahms, Ashley, Ashley, you help you help folks find treatment. We talked about this before the show. What are you looking for in a treatment program? And Dr. Brahms, interrupter. I think this is a great conversation because I think it'll help Meredith, Joe, and myself, and Tanya, and all of us in the room, in terms of being able to find the right fit when we're already having underfunded, understaffed, the problem that it is. How do we find the right place for people in our own practices?
Okay, so before I sent this guy to rehab,
And when you say sent this guy to rehab, you obviously, what do you mean? You helped him get his application
Operation
done?
Hope transported him there, and I, did the research and everything, and someone recommended that Salvation Army might have a good program. So he was ready. He was ready to get out of there. So
Get out of where? Where was he at the time?
Home, and his home life wasn't good. He lives around here.
Okay.
Home life wasn't good. He lived with his sister, and her 3 kids, and it just wasn't a good situation. So, he was ready, just antsy to get out anywhere. He didn't care. But then when he only lasted a few days at Salvation Army, everyone was like, give up on him. That's just...
Who said to you to give up on him?
His sister and other names that I will not mention.
Well, no, that's fine. I'm not asking for names. I guess, Meredith was talking about we bring family in, and I've had this issue too, and Meredith, jump in. Sometimes family are, first of all, they instigate.
Oh, for sure.
For God's sake, some of them are Dr. Brahms and I, we have the mutual client who the mother is just as poorly equipped to handle life
exactly
as
and
the
that's
client.
why
So
kids have no hope and no opportunity to see that there's a different way to live. But once he got out of Toledo, because I'm not giving up. I don't give up on people. I will freaking figure out
we've noticed.
what's going on.
That's exactly right. Good for you.
And
yes.
so I was like, okay, what is it that you want out of this? And I didn't even have to pry too much. He really did. And I mean, he is an older guy, not too old, but he's not a teenager, lost all these life questions and, all that crap you have at the...
Do you think somebody has to be at
age.
that age, that maybe middle age, before they can actually start to... I mean,
Life gets more real.
That's fair. That's fair. So, but what's the skeleton? I mean, what is, I come in, I have, let's say I have a substance abuse issue. I walk in to see you, and I need to go to treatment. And I accept that for myself, and I'm coming to you and I'm asking you, where do I go? What's the best fit for me? What are you looking for? And Doc, I think you were talking about, the history that brought us to this place.
Right.
Is that part of what you do?
Well, Yeah, I mean, and I would, first and foremost, try to get them to figure out, and it is a hard thing sometimes for a lot of people. It was easy for me, like I said, because I was brought up very well and I have good genes. I don't know what it is. Whatever, I am the way I am.
Just taking risky behaviors early in life, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
you
there's a
just
little
waste
bit
6
wrong
years
with
of your
that.
life.
A little bit wrong with that. Actually, your mother's sitting right next to you, for God's sake.
Yeah.
She's heard worse.
Well, true. But I think, yeah, just as far as the treatment, how do you know what's a good fit and what isn't?
So you have to figure out, kind of, at least get a general idea of why they are, like, did they grow up around parents that were using? Is that how they got introduced to it? Was it, more in my case where I wasn't really around anything, but then, you just really gotta figure out that specific individual and their home life and their environment that they grew up in. And then from there, you have to figure out what the best outcome will be. It's really hard to word this. It's like so complicated. But
Dr. Bromsky, can you kind of jump in there? I think that's something along the lines, when you're setting up. Go ahead.
No, it is. Keep going, Adam. I mean, the point is, you as attorneys have a limited window to investigate or suggest anything.
Exactly.
So if you're dealing with a lot of DUIs and a lot of drug problems, you've got to look at your geographical area. You've got to look at the financial situation, what the court will do, and then you have to go from there and figure that out. But to do that, you have to be a little bit of a psychologist. Like when I work on capital cases, one of the training I do is how can attorneys recognize mental health problems and how can they talk to their clients prior to hiring me or anyone else about those and get kind of a general guideline. The problem,
Well, I know we're doing, I'm going to plug
Go ahead.
OECDL real quick. I believe it's April 9th. Elizabeth Kelly and I are having a conversation on just that very topic and that very issue.
Yeah.
And any lawyer listening to this, I hope you joined in on that, because I think it's going to be a very good discussion. Elizabeth is incredibly knowledgeable. She wrote a book on representing people with developmental disabilities, so we're going to be kind of questioning her on that. I apologize. I just wanted to make sure we plugged that.
No,
Go ahead, Doc.
you should plug that. You should plug that. But as attorneys, you are very limited in the programs that you can suggest. I mean, the BOP doesn't really even tell you what they do for people. Every
No, they
program, no, they don't. They don't tell you anything. And when you have state or county funded programs, they are going to be, by their financial whatever, poor programs. And what I mean poor is they're going to be formulaic. Nobody can be treated in a formulaic fashion. Ashley certainly couldn't have been.
Doc, take a second to define what formulaic means, though.
Formulaic means is that you go through a 12-step process. You go through checklists. I've seen charts and charts and charts of checklists of, are you depressed? Do you make good eye contact? Is your affect congruent? Are you a danger to yourself? Checklists. Checklists describe nothing, just like the DSM describes very little.
Yeah.
So the form
I love the DSM.
The DSM is, you know what the DSM is.
Do you know how many illnesses I'd have if I went by the DSM?
Right.
Do you know how sick I would be?
Adam, anyone meeting you would recognize that. But
Easy.
Easy. But what the DSM is good
Shit.
for.
This is my fucking podcast. Shit.
We're all messed up.
Ganged up on
The
Adam.
DSM
Too many other partners this time.
Okay, the DSM.
Okay, go ahead, Doc. Sorry.
It's a telephone book of diseases. That's what it is. I mean, if you look it up, you'll see something, and it tells you someone's phone number. So if I look at someone's phone number in the olden days when you could tell a neighborhood, so in Ohio, like in Columbus, you had 457. You live near the OSU airport.
Right.
That's all it tells you. It tells you some general stuff. The DSM is good for putting under my computer monitor so it gets up higher. I mean, that's what the DSM is generally good for. Okay.
I spent all that fucking money on that book,
Yes, you did.
and you're telling me that I might as well take it to the bathroom and make it expensive toilet paper?
I'm ordering DSM-6 as soon as it comes out. No one's telling me.
Okay,
different.
go
No
ahead,
one's
Meredith. You can do that if you want to. And Xerox
does.
for me. She will. I'll order one too.
I like to have the whole anthology.
I think the point that is so important. I mean, we're all being crazy here. The point is that formulaic is useless. It's useless to sit and do a 12-step program and talk about your feelings. It helps to some people. It's not. It's one treatment. It's one treatment.
It's not personal.
But it doesn't get to the underlying etiology of people's problems.
Right.
If you have trauma, if you dissociate. Now,
Right.
why can't people stop taking drugs? Does anybody in the court system fully understand the pain that someone's feeling? Most people who take drugs. Why would you stop taking drugs? Why would you do it?
Doc, I'm gonna stop you right
Yes.
there because I think that's literally a question. We have someone sitting here who can answer that question.
Yeah.
What kind of pain are you going through when you're using, when you're not using, and why do you continue to use when you know? And
Right.
Ashley, you're smart, girl. You know heroin. It's literally some of the worst shit on the planet.
Right, and so there's a couple things that I want to say. First, like with the NA and 12-step programs, of course they work for some people.
Sure.
But
Yes.
every time I've ever gone to them, there's people trying to sell dope, people trying to get it. They don't it's the same thing over and over again. Like sad stories about, like, they're reliving it, they're keeping it current in their lives, and that is not moving on. And
But does that benefit them? Maybe. I mean, just because it doesn't benefit you, do you think that maybe it benefits them?
I highly doubt it unless I've been going to the wrong ones. Like, I've only been to a handful because they were all the same.
Okay.
So, and of course I can't speak for everybody in every NA meeting or, whatever, but like from my experience, it was just everybody going around talking about all the bad things that they've done and blaming others, and this is what, like, it was the least helpful thing, and a lot of it is court ordered, so people don't even want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not very useful.
Actually, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
And I apologize if this has already been discussed. What's your sobriety date?
5 years. December was 5 years.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
And what made you stop? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be ignorant. Like, I hope I'm asking this respectfully. Like, when were you just like, I'm done?
Well, it got to the point where I was like, I mean, this might get a little bit, not really morbid, but it really did get to the point where I was like, I have got to change or I'm going to kill myself. Those are the only two options. Not that killing yourself is ever an option. But though in my head, that was literally the only thing. And even a year after or so, I quit doing dope. I still, like, just laid in bed in this depression. And, like, I just...
She did. She
Yeah,
had
she
living
kinda
with me, and yes,
The most...
laid around and watched Netflix and just
Yeah.
Tony, I want to ask you a couple of questions.
So you
because-
had your mom.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank God.
I think, Meredith, a good place to transition to is, as a mom dealing with someone who is trying to overcome addiction, what was the greatest challenge for you? I mean, obviously you're a lawyer now and you're dealing with people, and you have a big heart for this area.
I do. Well, so at the time that she was going through the beginning even of her addiction, I was in law school.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of blame myself in a way for not recognizing some of the signs that maybe I should have caught early on. I think once it started coming out, my husband, my mother, other people tried to keep me sheltered because they knew I was at that time focusing on studying for the bar.
Sure.
And so while she was going through, even living with us, I had no idea what was going on.
Ashley, how were you able to successfully hide that from your mom?
Addicts become master manipulators. Like,
That's where I was going. Exactly.
I remember I spent most of my time in the bath because, like, dude, withdrawal is like, you cannot get warm. It's just chills. And, like, it's seriously like having the flu. So, for example, if they're, when you get the regular flu, you just gotta wait it out. There's nothing you can do about it, even if you have to miss work. But if there was like this, hypothetical, like shot that you could go take, or pill or whatever, and instantly make you feel the best you've ever felt, there would be a line like around the corner, like
The instant cure for the flu is essentially what you're saying. An instant cure for the flu.
yes, and that's why it's so hard.
That's an incredible analogy, by the way.
That's why it's so hard to, even though you know it's wrong, you get to a point where it doesn't even get you high anymore. It just makes you feel normal and functional.
It's homeostasis. It could put you at that level.
Yes.
It keeps you level.
Yeah, and I wish more people would understand that, because it's not like, and what's hilarious is that when I was withdrawing, people, like family members and friends, would think that I was fucked up. And
Really?
yes, because I'm out of it, I'm spacey, I can't focus on anything.
Right.
But then when I'm high, I'm my normal self.
It got to that point.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Like she said at her college graduation, I had no clue.
No idea.
And
I
didn't
did.
tell anybody
We were
until
all
just
there.
now.
We went to dinner afterwards. The whole family. I had no clue.
Doc, at what point does the brain literally, I mean, that's true substance abuse addiction at that point. I mean, you're literally dependent on it for normalcy, I guess. How far down do you have to go, or is that
You got cut off, Adam, but I'll try to answer the question. Okay.
I don't know what
Can you hear me, Ashley?
I mean,
Doc, hold on just a second. We got an audio problem.
Okay.
You're back. Yep, I've got you. Go ahead. Answer that question again. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, Ashley experienced it, so I have to talk about it more intellectually than Ashley can.
Right. right.
Because I think she speaks about it by what it's like. Obviously, there's the avoidance of withdrawal, because withdrawal is a lot worse than the flu. And many people who have been incarcerated understand that they're not laying at their mother's house withdrawing and taking a hot bath.
That's
they're laying
right.
in a prison cell. They're laying in a prison cell, throwing up
That's
on the
right.
floor, and shaking and being made fun of by the correctional officers.
Yeah.
And not
oh,
even.
God, it's so crazy you said that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and so who wants to go through that? Number one, because you hear about all your buddies, all your homies, all the people you know, and they're laying on a concrete floor. They're not given Ativan, which you need. You're not giving
Yes.
any type of yes. Go ahead, Ashley.
This girl that
on it.
I just started working with not too long ago, she's a coworker, and she was, obviously we're the only ones working there that have experienced addiction, and she was telling me the first time she went to prison, and she was young, like 17, 18, and they put her in a cell by herself, withdrawing, like vomiting, shitting herself.
Yeah.
And the guard was like making fun of her and was like, she was just like asking, like, can I please just take a shower? And he was like, I don't know, girls, like, should we let her shower or not? So, like, he let it up to the other, like, inmates to decide. And she was like, thank God they were nice about it, because
It's like a Stanford experiment.
Yeah.
dude, when she told me that,
yeah, it's not funny.
Yeah, it's
Like-
insane.
what, and especially being such a young girl, like
How old was she? Just if you want to tell us, like
at 17, 18,
Jesus.
yeah,
Poor thing.
and there's no freaking excuse for that.
Right.
That guy should lose his job. That's,
Sure.
Well,
that
a
makes
lot
me
of people
sad.
at the CO should probably lose their job. But what did it do to Ashley's brain? What does heroin do?
Yeah. I
Is
mean,
that I think what it takes over is various portions of the brain. Without getting into neuropsychology, it stops your ability to connect the emotional part of the brain to the cognitive part of the brain. So
Right.
she feels that she's lived it. That's the simplest way that I explain it to people. So when you have a feeling, if right now I have a feeling, let's say I'm worried about a relationship, or I'm worried about my mother, or I'm worried about work, okay? I have a cognitive part of my brain that's thinking like, right now I'm talking to you guys on a podcast, but I've got an employee problem. I've got to talk to my accountant. I got all these other things going on, but I'm able to calm myself down to some degree. I'm able to calm myself down and focus on all the fun I'm having with you guys and the importance of this and what I'm saying. But when you aren't able to cope, heroin cuts off that connection between. It's almost like you can feel something, but it's dead end, and you don't have to think about it. There was a Simpson episode, and it says, and this is what Homer said as he was sitting in a tub. You got to realize he was in a pool, and he says he was drinking a beer, and he says, alcohol is not the answer, but it makes you forget the questions.
Ooh.
Ah,
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that Homer Simpson sums it up.
Meredith, go ahead.
Meredith
Jump
used
in.
No, just
Meredith and
love
I
it.
we use South Park to guide our practices.
I mean, hey, I'm
Rick
on
and
board.
Morty.
I am so on board.
Hey,
Okay.
Joe.
Why did that? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask Joe, because from the DUI practice, and I think this is how much of your practice, obviously it's overwhelmingly alcohol, I assume, but are you finding that it's moving away from alcoholism and into more of drug use?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So it depends on region, actually.
Really?
But, there was a stretch there where we had a number of heroin-related DUIs, where people, I mean, they would go. It was particularly bad for a while, especially in Ashtabula County. But
Oh, wow.
they would. They were not confident in their dealer, and they would go to like a big box store, leave the car in drive, and put their foot on the brake and then do heroin. So if they knew that if they got a bad batch, their car would roll forward, there'd be an accident, and there'd be somebody to show up with Narcan.
Seriously? No shit. That's unreal. I've never heard that before.
I've heard of people like getting Narcan just so they can get high enough and then have it on hand to bring them out of it.
Like,
Like
fentanyl's
that.
scary.
That's
That I
That's
even
really scary.
don't understand, like even being an addict. Like, but then that goes back to why are you using? Like I was using
Yeah.
to numb my feelings and be able to freaking process.
function.
Yes, like a normal human being. I am not built like a collected, level-headed person. So and I've
None of us
began-
are, by the way.
Right.
At least
and
none of
you
us on
never-
this. None of us on this call.
Well, Meredith, Ashley, Joe, and I think Joe and Adam. I think it was Joe or Adam mentioned about people with substance abuse problems being immature. We talk about our clients not making good decisions.
Yeah.
In reality, you lost years of your development. You're smart enough, Ashley, to have got it back. But when you start really using drugs at most of my capital people who committed serious crimes have started at 11, 12 years old, sometimes earlier than that. You're losing major parts. You're 35 years old, but Joe's not in his head. You think like a 12-year-old. You think for the moment. You cannot abstract. There's no abstract reasoning. I don't think it's so much the destruction of the drugs. I think it's lack of developmental experience. You've lost.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so that gets into competence. But guys, from a psycho-legal perspective, and I know Joe and Meredith and Adam and everybody knows about this, then we get into competency and we get into culpability. How do you rate the culpability of someone who has lost the period of mastery in their life between 11 and 13, lost the development of identity between 13 and 15, lost integration into the adult world, and then at 35 they're faced with this thing? How does our legal system weigh those factors, and how do you look at competency? Now, I don't have answers for this because then
I
I
was
would
going to say.
if I had
They don't
answers,
look at it
Adam,
without an expert, Jolie.
Yeah.
what did you
I
say?
mean,
Meredith? What?
pretty sure I hire you for these things. I'm just throwing that out there, champ.
Says blah 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 blah. No, no one cares.
But the
Like,
reality
they have
is
to-
how do
they
we
have to be
how do
convinced.
how
And the
does
state don't
Meredith?
fight that. The state don't fight that.
Yep.
They do fight it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I'm hoping that people get out of
The
this.
state objects.
Yes, and the voluntariness is what where Dr. Braun was going. The difficulty is no one, unless you've been in it, can say, I didn't have a choice to put that needle in my arm.
Right.
Is that like, I don't know, did you use intravenously? Do you mind if I ask?
I only used 2 times. I let someone else do it for me because I didn't trust myself. I knew he had a clean box of needles, and he got the stuff off the dark web, which was
Not good.
No.
but you could tell it was as pure as it gets.
Joe.
Meredith, I don't even Meredith, you're like my child. I don't even trust Amazon. Who in the world would do this?
I don't even know. It's all encrypted. It's above my level, but
You trusted that situation and you allowed him to
yes,
inject
because I knew it was coming straight from that was their job as a supplier, and it wasn't Joe Schmo off the street that probably snorted half of it.
It was Joe Schmo off the internet. But my question is, do you feel like you had a choice?
Okay.
Was it voluntary to put that in your body at that point?
Absolutely, and I did start snorting it because, and I still, I don't understand why I had the obsession with, snorting stuff. It was just fun to me. I didn't care what it was. But, so, it, of course, is a choice to initially do it. But addiction is not a choice because you have no idea what you're in for. All you can do is base your choices off of your past experiences.
Or off your present absolute need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, and like I said,
Actually, let me ask you something. If you
go ahead.
at that time, do you feel like but this was before you'd had a realization that it was life or death for you. You're like, I don't want to live this way. It was
yeah,
4 or
this
5
was
years ago in
years.
December where you said that's it. So at the time, were you kind of thinking this is how I live right now. This is how I survive. That I need I'm going to survive because I have. It's I have to think there's a different mindset than what you have right now, because you're not using drugs right now.
Right. Right.
And so, what was it then that was kind of you were kind of I need to get this. This is the best I'm going to do.
Well,
It's
it just kind of came into my life. I was in college where drugs were very around, and
Where'd you go to college?
Bowling Green.
Okay, sorry.
So, and
The views,
like I said
the views of this
before-
show do not reflect upon Bowling Green.
Nice disclaimer, Adam.
Or the Salvation Army. I just want to cover that as well.
But yeah, so I didn't think of heroin as being any more dangerous or crazier than any other drug I've already tried. Which I am not joking when I say I've tried every drug you can possibly think of. And so when I tried heroin, yeah, it was kind of like opiates. It was stronger, and it did take that, take on that euphoric feeling that everybody talks about, where you feel nothing except that moment. And so then with everything else going on in my life, that's when it became a problem. And before, I was just using drugs, because that's just what everybody was doing at a party, and I was down to party, and yeah. But I could still go, during the week, go to my classes, get shit done, I worked at the TV station. Even my bosses smoked weed with us and stuff then, so, which, that's on a different level in my eyes, at least. But Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with public television. You think that everyone's looking real all the time? I mean, that must be the issue.
I was gonna say, Mr. Rogers had to be high. I don't know how the man stayed so fucking calm. He was smoking some really great shit. Let's be honest. He'd come in, he'd pull that cardigan off, change his shoes. Life was good. And then we'd enter the land of make believe.
Yeah.
It'd be a greater advertisement for LSD.
Right. I would have loved to.
Smoke what he had. I'm just kidding.
It would be a good time.
All right, so what I want to do, I do want to pivot here real quick. Dr. Brahms and I were talking, and even with Ashley a little bit, about the federal sentencing guidelines. And it's interesting, just, Joe, Meredith, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Chapter 5, Section H1, for whatever the hell that means, but it's interesting. I'm looking at 1.3. And basically it allows for a court to consider under 5 H13 a mental and emotional condition may be relevant in determining whether a downward departure is warranted. So that kind of seems to encapsulate what we're dealing with as if we identify substance abuse as a true mental health disorder, correct? Mm-hmm. However, we drop down to literally the next section that goes on to say, drug or alcohol dependence or abuse ordinarily is not a reason for downward departure. Substance abuse is highly correlated to an increased propensity to commit crime. So there is, at the very highest level in the federal courts, in the federal court system, there's already a predisposition, in my mind, that folks who are addicted, folks who are using drugs, should be punished, should not be granted. It's the status of having a mental illness. Is that fair, Dr. Braun? Is that a way to characterize it? Because if you have mental health issues, if you have a diagnosed issue, you're eligible for departure downward.
Well, courts lag behind in courts have always lagged behind. It's taken the death of people, the lifetime incarceration of people, for courts to catch up about Atkins, about Roper decisions, about the Miller cases, about all of this stuff. Courts still see the voluntariness of substance abuse. Now, there are people who truly, we have to understand, yes, they made the decision to put a needle in their arm, but in reality, can you imagine why somebody would do that to themselves?
Honestly, I can't. No.
Is this for fun? Generally not. It's not for fun. Is it a symptom of a mental illness? Absolutely it is. But for some reason we differentiate that. There are still prejudices around. I have a case in Oklahoma where the prosecutor told the defense attorney our client was just basically above an Atkins claim. And she said, we still need to kill the retarded. She goes, they caused crime, get rid of them.
Wow.
Those attitudes still exist in 2000, I guess it's before COVID, 2019, whatever. So what the federal statute is stating is that the government is years behind what we need to do to educate people. And the way that we do that is constantly pushing the limit. We have to push the limit in terms of what's the etiology of the substance abuse. Mm-hmm. We have to describe to a judge, what does it feel like to be an addict? Now, let's not play games. All of us have taken pain medication. I've had surgeries. I've taken pain medication. It feels really good. All of us have hard jobs. I heard Meredith on another podcast. I know Meredith. She works her tail off, and she's emotionally involved. Mm-hmm. Isn't it good to have a drink? She jokes about having a drink. I don't think she's alcoholic. She's a lot of things, but she's not alcoholic. and that
that's coming from a psychologist, Meredith. Don't you worry.
That I can tell. But we are really denying ourselves reality to think that we, whether a federal judge, a psychologist, a lawyer, whoever we are, any better than a defendant that we see.
I 100% agree with that. Oh my God.
Who's saying Meredith? Go ahead.
I
said that. Yeah, I think it's completely hypocritical to ignore the fact, like what you're saying, that these substances feel good. When you use them, they feel good.
They do.
And even like Ashley was saying, it's not necessarily that they feel good, but they bring you back to feeling okay. Just to even feel okay.
Soothing.
To feel normal.
Yeah,
to feel normal.
Exactly.
I mean, imagine what it'd be like to live your life and to know that your father was sexually molested you, you had no place to go, to hate yourself, to have continual anxiety and triggers and flashbacks and depression, and how that is. So, is it should you be held more accountable because you transported drugs, because you sold drugs, because you had an addiction? The woman we talked about earlier on, she has nothing. One thing that Adam didn't share, which is very important about that case, is she told me, she says, "Why did you sell more drugs?" She says, "I was jealous that people were having more fun than me. I was jealous that people felt better than me." We're talking
there
like
was-
a developmental 4-year-old.
Yes.
This woman was 4 years old.
Yes.
I'm jealous because you have a a play school toy that I don't have. I'm jealous. That's what
Right.
we're talking about.
And she was also, and I remember, and now that you brought that up, Doc, she was also actively seeking the strongest that she could find that would bring her the
Fentanyl.
closest to death.
Yes. Well, she
As
died
close as she
3
could
times.
get. Yes, I mean, she did. She accomplished that goal.
And her mother would not come over. She lived down the street. Mom would not come over after the paramedics were there. She goes,
Yeah.
if she dies. Mom would not come over. She said she was just too busy doing zero, but would not come over there.
It's true. It's the absolute truth.
But
So
you're
what can-
dealing. Go ahead.
I was going to ask this kind of, I guess, more of a wrap up or question for you and Ashley and Dr. Brown. What can we do as attorneys to better present this in such a way that is persuasive is not even the right word, but I don't think persuasive does it justice.
Like-
How do we, I know Meredith, myself, I know Tony, we sit down with our clients. We do get that background. We go after those school records. We
For
go after
sure.
all that stuff to try and understand not only just how to communicate with our client, but where they're coming from and what their past is. But how do we translate that into mitigation and sentencing, or even in the case itself, in such a way that a court's going to give a shit?
I mean, ultimately, it just depends on the judge and how willing, like, they are to swallow their pride and,
When you say swallow your pride, I really want to, I know where you're going, but I want you to explain, because I think that goes to societies and even those in the black robe, what their predisposition is towards people with substance abuse problems.
Right. Well, because I think that a lot of, like, say they went lenient on a case that was more public or whatever the case may be. I'm sure that they would receive a lot of backlash from the community. Like, say you got someone off for trafficking fentanyl.
Okay.
And that is, especially with social media, like, oh, you shouldn't be, defending those people. They're the scum of the earth, blah, blah, blah. But those people are most likely suffering through addiction too. Like,
They generally are. Absolutely.
I sold drugs when
Yeah.
I was going through addiction.
Okay.
But I really do think peer recovery needs to...
Stop, because you're getting off track.
Okay.
How do we take that concept of they're going through addiction themselves, they're not just traffickers or they're not just junkies and users, these are people. They are worthy of our empathy.
Well, if that's not on your radar as a human being, then you're a piece of shit.
Dr. Brown, pitching that to you on that note.
I cannot top that, but I cannot top that, because if I agree, I'm not going to have a job.
I know.
I'll say it for you.
That's why I pitched it to you, Doc.
I'll tell you, Ashley, I've had judges be complimentary for how much they've learned during testimony. And I think that gently but forcefully educating people and giving them something, this is very manipulative, but hook their decision on. Something that they can not just defend and say, guess what, I'm seeing this in a different way and it's better for society.
Yes.
I think that when we get judges involved in drug treatment and actually have them on the boards, I think judges should be on the boards of substance abuse treatment programs.
They should educate
Yeah.
themselves somehow.
But
some way.
that and there are a lot of judges who I think at least make some attempt, and there are these drugs courts. We have
Yes.
mental health courts. Two questions for you guys. One, why are they separate if mental health and substance abuse disorders kind of walk hand in hand? And the second is, are they really effective if most of the time from what I've seen in my practice is we're sending a cookie cutter? We're sending them to cookie cutter treatment?
And I think we set them up to fail.
How so, Tawny? Go ahead.
I think the courts put in place all these requirements. You're going to go through treatment. You're going to pass your drug screens. But yet at the same time, they're not maybe helping them find a safe place to live. So they're either living in a house where people are using, or they're couch surfing, and they don't have a job, so they have all this time on their hands.
Right.
And that's where peer recovery. I didn't mean
No,
to
that's
interrupt.
okay. Yeah, and
No,
peer
that's all
recovery.
right, yeah.
But and I think they should go hand in hand. But I think the court puts enough rules in place
Too
without.
much?
Well, maybe not too much, but without giving them maybe a map or a guideline of this is how you can pass your drug screens. Not just going to
Right.
treatment. They need to do much more than just setting up these
but
rules.
is there a map or guideline? Is there truly one map?
There's
No,
not, and I
there's-
think that's where they need to take time to sit down and figure out first, do you have a safe place? I mean, you kind of go back to the
The
hierarchy of
basic needs,
needs.
yeah,
I'm sure Dr.
absolutely.
Bravo,
Yes.
you know, do you have
Yes.
shelter? Do you have food?
Yeah.
And start with those basic needs,
You're right.
and then helping them find a job. I'm involved with a nonprofit organization that does help people not only get jobs but maintaining them, because so many people don't even know how to get up and go to work every
Right,
day.
right.
They don't know what it's like. They don't have conflict resolution. They have an issue with the boss or coworkers. So there's so many more services that need to be taken into account to be, in my opinion,
Well,
successful.
Absolutely.
You know,
Go ahead.
Tawny, I think what you make are without those. Let's talk about basic needs, and you talk about basic housing and basic food and all of those things. There's another basic issue, and that's love. And I don't
Ooh.
mean that in an
Yes.
enabling way.
Ooh, yes.
And what I've learned from drug courts, I'm glad someone's clapping for me. That's good, Ashley.
That's Ashley. That's
I was-
Ashley.
oh, I love it. Okay. Is the people I've seen that have the best success in drug courts have judges who have had them come back and come back, and it's the programming to some degree. It's the judge saying, "You did this. I'm here for you every month." These people have never had a parent. Let me tell you a story that has nothing to do with substance abuse. Years ago in my career, we're talking 30 years ago, I was doing a juvenile case, and the kid was on an ankle monitor in a really bad neighborhood in Columbus. And I saw him at like 8 in the morning, and I brought him a Yoo-Hoo. Remember Yoo-Hoo, the chocolate drinks?
Oh, absolutely.
And
It's
I
delicious.
brought him. Oh God, you have bad taste. But that's another story. Okay. And I brought him some donuts, and never in his life had anyone ever brought him breakfast. He's 13 years old.
See,
That is the kind of love that these people have never had. And when you're a judge, go ahead, Ashley. You're dying to talk here.
I'm
This is
sorry.
important.
But like that's exactly why I feel like I don't know if there's a higher purpose or if this is all just a chaotic world. I don't know. That's not important. But I swear.
I think it's both. It's both, Ashley.
It is both. Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Both.
I agree.
All
Meredith.
right.
It's both.
I'm glad we're on the same page. But like,
Like-minded people here.
I really do think that this is my responsibility because I think I did get involved in drugs somehow, some way, even though I come from a loving family, I'm smart, I have all of the things that don't really fit with addiction on, textbook addiction. But I think that's why I feel it's such my responsibility because I have skills. I am educated, and I have empathy to utilize to help these people. I swear this is my purpose. And
But Ashley, you could have all the knowledge, but what you have is love. You could get people intellectually actually into the right program, but what you have to give, and I don't know, Meredith might know if the word is chaotic or just bullshit or whatever it is. I don't know, but I haven't figured that out yet. Okay, but what I do know is what you give people is the undivided attention they've never had from anybody, undivided
Exactly,
love,
yes.
and that's the key.
And that's what I've been shown my whole life. So I feel like it's my responsibility to show them, like.
But I'm going back to the question because we got away from it again. You
Sorry.
two. It's all right. Don't fucking worry about it. It'll be fine. I'll bring us back. So
That's your job.
I
It's
know.
your podcast.
I'm aware. So, how do we as practitioners, whether it is in an OVI case where we're doing, mitigation, and we do mitigation in OVI cases. I mean, Tanya and I do it all the time.
Yep. Yeah.
How are we going to best be able to get the court to understand that substance abuse is as much a mental health issue as schizophrenia?
Facts.
Like,
Research.
But
like, what else is there?
Doc, you're right. You're absolutely right. The inability to listen, though, is what we run into. And Meredith, Joe, am I right?
I feel,
The sheer,
get me in there.
the brick wall. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay.
We were fixated on the lighting. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. No, you're fine. My God. I love this podcast.
You got to make sure the lighting was right.
Hey, Kim Kardashian, Adam's asking you a question.
Oh shit. Meredith, just so we're
Was
clear,
your video.
that was
It was right
Dr.
for you.
Brahms. That was not
It
me.
wasn't.
All right. So how do you guys run into when you try to put on this mitigation about their backgrounds and their histories, that the courts will literally say, I feel really bad, that's terrible, and then sentence them and stroke the shit out of them anyway?
Depends on the
I run
court.
into it all the time. I
Depends
run
on
into
the
it all the
court.
time. We run into it all the time. But
Yes.
How
yes,
do
I run
we
into
get past
very,
that?
very unsympathetic, just malevolent courts. Yes, I do. But
So
not
then-
every court's like that. Some
No,
courts.
I agree.
some
I
courts will-
completely agree.
And I don't
Well-
think it's a problem that can be solved like all over the board. At least not right now. I think it starts in, your little bubble and then
And that's what we're trying to do, Ashley, because
Grassroots.
our little bubble
Grassroots.
is this courtroom that we get to go into
Right.
and advocate for our clients. So I guess Dr. Brahma, you, if I can speak for a moment, sweet Jesus, you gave that report on the client in federal court that ultimately needs civil commitment, and the judge damn near fell out of his chair. Is that the level? I mean, is that the
You
level
never
that we
told
have
me
to,
any of this. Did he hurt himself?
Well, you know Judge Helmick.
I
he's
do know
fine. He's got a little bit of a rough hip, but he'll be fine. But is that what it takes? Do we have to hire a psychologist? Do we have to hire a neuropsych, depending on the circumstances, every time to come to those conclusions? Because let's be honest, number one, courts aren't going to pay for it, and our clients, sure as shit, generally speaking, can't afford it.
I think it's got to start with legislature.
That's fair.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay, so Ashley, and I'm sorry because Adam, this is your show, but I was just curious, and I don't want to start a whole new topic, but do you think this starts with sort of like a destigmatizing of the concept? Because I truly think that this is like not that big of a deal, and sometimes judges think like, oh my God, this is like the worst thing ever, and it's like, dude, it's not. Like, you just aren't educated. But I don't want to be a dick. But is it just
I'll be
with,
your
like,
dick.
That was a really weird thing to say right now, actually.
That's what I'm here for.
But does this need to start with like a general sort of like, hey, we all need to calm down. This isn't really, it's a huge deal, but like it's not what you're saying it is. You know what I
In
mean?
terms of, from the judge's standpoint, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not what the judge is saying. It's literally
Right.
an issue that can be addressed and should be addressed on an individual
Right.
level. Right.
Can I bring? Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Were
I
you
want to
getting-
say one thing
Okay.
real quickly about this diagnostically.
Yeah.
Just a framework is that yes, it's bad to shoot up heroin. Okay, I wouldn't recommend that for anybody either way, actually.
No.
But it's a treatable problem. Let's talk about psychopathology. Let's talk about real sociopathy. Let's talk about the person who steals $2 million from the building authority in Cleveland. Let's
you.
talk about somebody. Let's talk about someone
Thank
who
you.
doesn't give a darn. Let's talk about a Medicaid. Let's talk about the opioid doctors in Southern Ohio, of which I know many of them, who can sit
Right.
there and get cash, hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, and
right
sell
now.
this stuff. Okay, how do you treat that? Those are untreatable. These people are untreatable, but
That's
yet
right.
they have fancy lawyers and they get a different look at because they don't smell and they have all their
Right.
teeth.
You know what's
And-
hilarious? And Adam was actually with me when we went to that one time when we had to go to Marion because
Yeah.
I got caught.
All right, we're breaking privilege, but she did it, not me.
I mean, I don't care. That's okay.
Editing, that's right. Fine.
But seriously, I remember the guy telling me like, how do you get drugs? Like, you don't look like a person that would be, like, and that should have been a compliment, but like, I was so offended by that. Like,
You
that
should have
just
been.
shows
You should have
how
been offended by
ignorant
that.
you are.
That's exactly right. You should have been offended by that.
Yeah.
Like-
Absolutely. You have absolutely should be offended by that.
Like, what the? Oh, that made me so mad, and I like still think about that to this day. Like, you,
Yeah.
just
What-
like
what does
there's
addiction look
functioning
like?
alcohol-
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
does addiction look like? There is no.
There's no poster child.
No.
Right.
So you went, Dr. Brown. What were you were talking about the fact that it's this treatable, and I think we're avoiding the word disease.
I wouldn't
Disorder.
avoid the word disease at all. I think it's a disease of the way that your brain works. I think it starts off with a disease of developmental issues and other underlying diagnoses. It clearly is, but we're not repulsed by other diseases. We want to help other diseases much better than this one. But in
But-
terms of treatability, it doesn't mean that you have maladaptive, long-term personality characteristics. So you read the DSM. What are you reading?
Oh no. I'm
You're reading
about.
the thing. Okay.
I've got the I got the sentencing guidelines because I want to go
Okay,
back
go
to
ahead.
this because I think this line from Congress says exactly what you're getting at. Substance abuse is highly correlated to an increased propensity to commit crime, whereas every other mental health condition is exempt from that sentence, from that statement.
Yeah. That's
Can we-
crazy, isn't it?
That's insane to me.
That's insane.
You're telling me that paranoid schizophrenics with delusions and homicidal and suicidal ideations, they're less likely to commit. Are you kidding? They don't know where they
No.
are half the damn time.
No, do you think people with white collar crimes are going to stop committing them once they do 2 years at a federal farm?
That's right.
No,
That's right.
I don't think that's going to happen. Do you think that people who are sexual molesters or people who commit domestic violence are going to start that? Those people are treatable. We're talking
And that's-
about a lot of but
Actually, a
But-
very
Oh, Doc,
good
that's
example
you
because
are
there's a
you are
lot of
killing it
evidence
right there.
answerable
what
to.
Meredith?
Pedophilia is what? It's a diagnosis, right? It's a diagnosis that we could ask for a downward departure, and I've actually been granted one in federal court for it.
That's pretty
But we-
amazing.
But I can't get a downward departure because someone's addicted and was selling quote unquote drugs for the purpose of only feeding their addiction.
Right,
right.
and honestly, like, you're only hurting yourself with addiction. Yes, of course, if you're selling it and someone
Yeah.
ends up overdosing, there's that. But
And I've had that case.
Me
That's
too.
what-
Yeah, it's
That's
awful.
a sad case.
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and
That's a sad case where your client's charged with
Manslaughter.
yeah,
It's a manslaughter.
involuntary manslaughter because
Yep.
she thought she sold
yeah.
I-
I have a friend.
Heroin that she didn't cut. Heroin that she didn't insert the fentanyl to, but she happened to sell that little fucking pack. Yes.
heroin, but was
Yeah.
actually fentanyl. And
Yep.
that's a sad case. That's
Yes,
I
it is.
believe, in my experience, I believe you can convince juries easier than you can judges. I believe that there's ways you can pick a jury and hit home. I had a case in Oklahoma where this guy was high on meth, has a long history of meth. He shot a police officer, and the guy died on his body cam for 40 minutes, bleeding to death in a field.
Oh
and
my
we
God.
and we convinced one jury, and we got the guy life.
Wow.
And we talked about why he became a substance addict, what happened to his childhood in great detail, until people could feel what we got two people actually. They actually could feel what it would be like and how desperate you must be.
But you were in the mitigation phase of a death penalty.
Oh, in the mitigation phase of a death penalty.
Yeah, so we're
and-
talking like elements of like no death,
That's
no
right.
death. Just like there's a commission of a felony, you have to prove the felony didn't happen before you can really, unless you want to go for jury nullification, which I'm all for. I'm all
Yeah, I was
for.
gonna say that's why we have juries.
Right. No, what I'm saying is that I wonder if there's a way to touch people. You've got the law to follow, and the thing with downward departures, the only way that I've found that you could touch a federal judge is you have to have a game with him or her that they know that they're not looking at the substance abuse, they're doing a downward departure for other reasons than the substance abuse.
And you're right. I think that underpinning the substance abuse is all of the diagnoses that led up to, whether it's trauma, PTSD, things of that nature. You just kind of leave the substance abuse disorder there. And I've actually seen you and Dr. Fabian do that very successfully over the years. By the way, just really quick, Dr. Brahms, do you think, and this is just a theory of mine, and I know John doesn't watch my podcast, but I'm going to make him
He
for this
should.
purpose. I'm going to. Do you think that John calls himself a neuropsychologist just to pick up women, or is he actually one? Because I've been going, when I'm out at bars, I tell women I'm a cosmonaut, and it's
I'm
great.
sure
It works well. But I could just see John walking in and being like, I'm a neuropsychologist, no big deal.
as far as our profession goes, I will tell you about my profession. Good looks is not part of our profession. And because of that, John, as I tell him, he's like my brother, so I take this on this all the time. He calls me I could tell you, I can't say this on a podcast. Anyway, no, I can't say it on this podcast. Okay, he's the best looking man in forensic psychology. Okay, he's the best looking man in forensic psychology. He's brilliant, but he has that going
What's
for
his
him.
name?
John Fabian. And I'll tell you, he's the only Meredith. He is the only psychologist, neuropsych or psychologist that can get the women in my office to actually wear makeup.
Yes.
Oh shit! Oh well.
Yeah, and that includes my mother, by
I'll
the way.
Google him.
That includes my mom. She actually didn't wear Birkenstocks one day because he was coming in the office.
Snap.
No bullshit. Pretty impressive. Yeah.
I mean.
Anyway, I digress, but I do, we're running pretty low on time here, but I want to give, Ashley, I apologize. I want to give everybody a shot to ask Ashley one more question. I think, especially if you have something that you think might help in your practice that she can give you with her experience. And then also Dr. Brahms, we're going to call this segment Ask a Psychologist.
Don't.
But or don't.
No.
But is there something that is there something that you guys want to know from these two that we haven't already covered? I know Meredith, Joe, you guys were kind of late getting logged in. That took a little bit of time, but go ahead, ask away.
I would just ask Ashley, how do you feel now?
That's a good
How do I feel now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh. It's a loaded question. I feel still pretty lost, and like I do beat myself up, like all
Why? Why do you beat yourself
time.
up?
Because I should be farther ahead in life than I
Mm-hmm.
am.
No,
But
girl.
like,
You're good.
you know,
Yeah, you're killing it.
I'm paying off my credit report stuff. My goal is to have a car, you know, by the time my refund check comes back. You know, I have realistic goals. I think a time in your life, you don't really think realistically. Or if you do want to have this like crazy goal of like, I want to be an astronaut, you don't know. It's not enough to just say that.
Right.
And as
Cosmonaut.
Cosmonaut.
right. Well, like, and as kids we're
Use
told.
it now, thank me later.
As kids we're told we can do whatever we want, but we're not given steps to take to get us there.
That's a really good point.
So
Hell of a
you
great
feel-
point.
Do you feel better or worse or the same than you did 5 years ago in December?
Oh, sure as hell better. Oh my God.
Fuck yeah. That's all.
But in what ways?
Congratulations.
My life consisted of, for at least 6 years, of waking up, trying to figure out how I was going to get money, trying to figure out how I was going to get high. That's all my life consisted of, and what a fucking waste of time that is. Like, and like we were saying about how, you know, it kind of keeps the brain at a certain age. I totally believe that, because while your friends and, you know, people you went to school with are having these awesome life experiences, you're sitting in a fucking garage, like, getting high with strangers you don't even know, and you're not learning anything from that. It's keeping you stagnant, and
You're not growing.
and that's and it's hilarious, because I've always been like so afraid of, you know, time going so fast and not being able to accomplish everything I want to in life. But again, I think that's why I started using, because I couldn't shut those thoughts up. Like, I cried on my 16th birthday because I felt like I was getting old. So, like, yeah.
Seriously.
Like,
She bawled at her high school graduation.
Kiss my ass.
Yeah.
dude,
She's
we
like
all
Peter
got it.
Pan. That is another
37
segment,
here.
Dr. Braun, that, not wanting to grow up. Why?
It's because growing up sucks.
It does. You're right. It really does.
But most kids don't think of it at that point in their life. They
I
just want to be
did.
adults.
Yeah, it's true.
I knew. Something in my brain was telling me. I knew.
Joe, what about you? Any questions for Dr. Braun or for Ashley?
Yeah, kind of for both of them, because we've got a lot of people who put a lot of stock in this. What do you think? What is your opinion or outlook on 12-step programs?
Ooh.
Well, you know, we talked a lot about that. Ashley talked about that, and neither one of us talked about it in a very positive way. You know, there's a lot of controversy in research about whether these programs are effective. There's a tremendous amount of discourse about whether this really works. And Ashley makes some very true points. People sell drugs that tell the same stories over and over. But this is how I look at it. Okay, right now it is whatever it is, 8:30 at night. If I had an addiction, I would be much better off having gone to a meeting at 7:30, saw people I knew, understood that other people had problems, calmed myself down, and went to bed. And it's the day by day being able to do that, because you don't have a parent, you don't have support. And I think what it does is it calms down. We talked an hour ago about the connection between the emotional part of your brain and the cognitive part of your brain. I think what AA does, and this is my view, this is having done this for, we're talking about age, for a long time, is that I think it nullifies, it modifies, it quiets down that connection, and it gives you some coping skills. You start to, it might be a modicum of coping skills, but you start to say, hey, that person didn't quit their job. That's a good idea. Okay.
Not to quit my job, yeah.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then you wake up the next morning, you go to work, and then the next morning you wake up and go to work, and you're like, I just made $80. Damn, I made $80. I'm okay for now. Then you go to a meeting, you get another little good idea. I should call my mom, and I shouldn't listen to her stuff, but I should be nice to her, okay? And I should forgive her. You call up your mom, and you forgive her, and you feel a little bit better. Do I think that is a slow parenting process? Yes. Do I think that it has the professionalism to address the significant underlying issues? Probably not. That's my 5-second summary. Maybe more than 5 seconds. But as Ashley would say, what is time mean?
Julie Brown's TED Talk.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, and you know, I agree. Of course, there's.
Take your hand off your mic.
Oh, I'm so
You're
sorry.
okay. No, it's all right. Just want to make sure that we can hear you. Absolutely.
There's always going to be things that work for some and don't work for others, but my fear is that they don't have the best intentions. When I remember my first meeting, my friend took me there because I was afraid to go by myself. The guy leading it was drooling out of his mouth. Like, I was like, why am I here? Like, I mean, not that anyone's better than anybody else, but it's like
You're here to stay sober, and this guy's obviously fucked up here.
Yeah, and it just did not make sense to me. And keep on coming back. It works. Does it though? Like,
Is it
You were, like,
individual though?
disappointed
it's
in what you
so.
saw.
Is 12 steps individual or?
Yeah, no. Do you think that that approach is individual? Like, I
for
think
sure.
I think I know where Joe's going, because so many of our courts, so many of our judges say, "Well, get him into 12-step, or 12 steps available at the jail." Why aren't they
Right.
doing 12-step at the jail? Well,
Because-
12-step might not work for them.
Yes, and one thing, because I am not a religious person,
Right.
And
You have to accept a higher yes.
exactly, and
Go ahead.
I think that is important. I mean, it's human makeup is mind, body, spirit. I think you should believe in some sort of higher power, but I don't want it to be forced down my throat and like, it's not for me. But I know a guy who's been clean for probably almost 20 years now, has a kid, but I feel like he's addicted to recovery. Like
Yes.
he still lives on campus.
Speak on that, yeah.
Like, which I mean, it beats the alternative. But
Sure.
like, what are you're not finding yourself through that? Like, your identity is recovery now. Like, and I hope he figures that out. But I mean, it's all up to the individual.
Actually, all of this could be a book. What the points that you're making can be extrapolated on, and attorneys need to understand this, is that yes,
That's- yeah.
AA becomes an identity, but many people with substance use problems have never had that identity, any kind of identity. And when you don't have an identity, you have tremendous anxiety. If you don't, look how you felt in college. You didn't know who you were, so you had anxiety. They said you were bipolar. They said this. I don't think you're bipolar. What do I know? But I don't think you're bipolar. Okay. I mean, I'll charge you a copay for that one, but I don't think.
I was gonna say, fuck, Doc, you're doing diagnoses. Let's get this shit going. We got a lot of people with some fucked up shit to talk about.
Put myself in
Yeah,
there.
Chris would like to join the conversation now.
No, I'm taking Chris out and I'm asking about you. That's what I'm
Fuck
doing now.
that. No.
Game
Fuck
on.
that.
Yes,
Game
yes,
on.
yes.
Shut up.
Game one.
Don't you have a board to run? Ashley's trying to talk, damn it.
I'll send you an email separate and apart from this.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'll be waiting.
I really do. I don't know if this will help in like the core aspect or not, but I want to start because my degree is in communications with a focus in media production.
And look at you here.
So, right. So, I want to start making these videos called Faces of Recovery because there's faces of addiction and it's all people all messed up. And, but I want this to be called Faces of Recovery. I want to interview, a handful of people, girls and guys, all at different levels of recovery. And then maybe, once a month have an actual conversation or something like that because it is so important, not even just for the courts, but for parents that may not understand how to deal with addicts and all that stuff. And I think it could really be an opportunity to open people's eyes to how everybody is different and everybody handles it certain ways. Everybody has a story, and I am a storyteller. That's what.
Good for you.
That's.
Good for you. And I'll tell you, if there's anything we can do, Chris, myself,
All
your
of us.
mom's right here. Yeah, and I think everybody on this call, if you need anything, you let us know.
I would love that,
We'd love to help.
that would be
Because
awesome.
I know it will reciprocate right back to the way we practice and the way we approach our clients who are dealing with this.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you never know, like some girl, because that girl I was telling you about that, was treated like crap by that guard, she's willing to get on camera with me and her friend. I know a lot of people that are in recovery, so I really want, and I don't think I'm going to focus on time, like recovery time. I don't think that's important.
I was gonna say, I think it's so individual, wouldn't it
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's irrelevant because if you got
be? Well, doesn't that
You
make,
can't
doesn't that make
focus.
drug court irrelevant then? If you've got to complete 6 months of treatment before you complete drug court, then you're considered recovered by the courts?
When you're willing to talk about it. That's what, right? Does it-
Right.
yeah,
That's exactly right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's insane. There's
Yeah.
these arbitrary, there's these, in our profession, actually, there are these arbitrary labels, at least, and Dr. Braun, correct me if I'm wrong, that have no correlation to any type of science or any studies that at least that I've been made aware of, that say, okay, a year of treatment in lieu of conviction, you successfully complete it, you're good, you've got all the skills you need. It goes back to what Dr. Browns was saying, unless you understand that person's history and unravel the trauma and all the other
Right.
things, how can you
Yes.
say that this program should only last a year?
there's
There needs to be a more
way.
holistic approach
Yeah,
to treatment.
yeah, absolutely. And the courts, I mean,
Individualized a little bit more.
yeah, I mean, the sentencing guidelines, I think it starts at the top. It truly does, and has to filter down. It's a change of attitude, and I think that's what you're after, Ashley. I do,
Yeah.
and I think everybody on this call commends the shit out of you. Absolutely,
No
And-
kidding.
I do.
I do.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thanks, guys.
we really do.
Yes.
And any support we can
Very proud.
throw your way, you've got our support in your work.
Well,
Absolutely.
I appreciate it, and that I don't know, that makes me feel really good because I've done a couple of these, and it's discouraging when like you have 2 people watching, but that you got to start somewhere.
Yes.
So,
You do, and and you
Whatever.
are. You're having your voice be heard. Dr. Braun, is there something that we haven't touched upon? And I know that we could probably spend 4 or 5 hours on this topic,
Oh my
if not
God, yeah.
longer. Is there something that we haven't touched upon that you think is important for the practitioners that may be watching this?
I think I could talk for hours about this, but one thing the one tidbit to come away with that comes from Ashley too, is you need to ask the court system who they're referring your client to, and you need to understand the programs and fight for the right programs. And you need to do that. You have to understand your client. You have to take the time to have some understanding. Like Ashley talked, I think before we were on camera, about a friend of hers and what program fit for him. Somebody she referred. I think knowing the programs, advocating, and not being afraid to stand up and saying, this is not going to work. This is what this person needs. You have to pay for counseling too. You have to pay for this. And what Tanny says is about housing, about all of those issues. But it starts with advocating, and you can only advocate if you understand. That's all you can do.
That's right.
And you've got to critique the programs and not be afraid to do it. I mean, are you going to get better sitting in a place sleeping on a mattress that's about an inch thick in a substance abuse program where
No.
people are chain smoking around you, and for
Right.
breakfast you get a donut wrapped in plastic and a bottle of milk, and then you've got somebody who's got 2 years of college and is a drug addict themselves at the same time, who's working for $11 an hour and telling you how you're going to live your life and having no
Exactly.
understanding. Are you? Okay, I mean, it's reality. Are you going to
You're
really
right.
get better?
You're
That's
absolutely
the
right.
question. Mm-hmm.
Meredith, Joe, any closing remarks that you guys want to make?
And I'm not opening a drug treatment program. Adam, no.
What? Yeah.
I'm not opening a drug treatment program.
No, actually, I'll find a way to share my contact information with you. I'm very interested in talking with you more, like on a private sort of
absolutely.
platform, and in any way you can sort of help me advocate for. I want to hear more about you, and I appreciate very
Yes.
much letting me ask you questions on here and trust me enough to answer them. And like, I think you're awesome and you're beautiful, and thank you for talking.
Thanks.
It's cool.
Yes.
It's really cool. You're brave. You're really brave.
Yes, you are.
She
How brave
deserves
would
a
I be?
hand. She really
Yes,
does.
absolutely. Thank you
Congratulations.
so much.
Great.
Oh goodness.
Chris, I know we've kind of skipped you, so that was on purpose because I don't like you. Thank you, everybody. We thank you for watching. Dr. Braun,
you.
Ashley, thank you so much for being here.
welcome.
You guys are welcome back anytime. Anytime you
Thank
have
you.
new projects. Dr. Braun, I know you and Meredith work together, and we have a good time, so I'm sure you'll be back soon. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.
Thank you, guys.